This is Cue Pate from the Topkats Pride, and I wanted to do a commentary. I wanted to come and chill with you and do a commentary on a video that was just recently uploaded by Mr. Mike Adams, also known as the Health Ranger. You can find Mr. Mike Adams on YouTube at the Health Ranger, and you can also find him on the internet under the Health Ranger as well. Mike Adams, here in July 2017, he has a video that he posted some months ago, but I found it today, so it's relatively new to me. And by coincidence, Mike Adams uploaded his video some months ago in reference to over 21,000 some odd people, around 23 according to his report, but according to my report that was updated since his report, which was done about 4 months ago, something like that. My report done here in July 2017, which is an update, shows 21,587 people that were wrongfully convicted in Boston, Massachusetts, or I should say better yet, in Suffolk County, Massachusetts. And also there were another 21 some odd thousand that were wrongfully convicted by false lab results relating to drugs. There was another woman by the name of Sonia Farak who followed the first woman that was convicted, named Annie Dukin. And together, both these women falsified about 43,000 different samples that were used to convict US citizens, mostly. And these people served their sentences by the time this court case resolved in 2017, but the court case began in 2012. Stick with me. I'm just giving you the facts before I play this feed, this video feed from the Health Ranger's site, his channel. I just want you to know the basis of what Annie Dukin and Sonia Farak did, and it's atrocious. And the reason why I wanted to do the commentary here is because Mr. Mike Adams even gives a deeper insight into the whole situation. And with him being a scientist by trade, a professional scientist who has a lab, who has a staff, who is fully familiar with this whole dimension of analyzing different type of materials and samples, things like that, different type of substances. Mike Adams is the perfect person to present. And so during the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding a little commentary because it's very important. Before that, let me play a bit of the video that I just uploaded a few days ago here in July 2017 that refers to the same subject matter that Mike Adams had coincidentally uploaded a few months ago. So this video is about the falsification of tens of thousands of different samples that caused tens of thousands of people to be sent to jail. And this is what I had put together, and I would like for you to go and check out the rest of the video to get the full information. I'm gonna play about 5 minutes or so here. Prosecutors dismissed more than 21,500 drug cases in wake of Massachusetts lab chemists' misconduct. The woman that you see on the screen is former Massachusetts drug lab chemist Anna Dukin, last name spelled D-O-O-K-H-A-N, in Suffolk Superior Court in Boston, Massachusetts, before a hearing where she entered a guilty plea on charges of obstruction of justice, perjury, and tampering with evidence. I'd like to say that again. Anna Dukin entered a guilty plea on charges of obstruction of justice, perjury, and tampering with evidence. Prosecutors in 8 counties around Boston, Massachusetts, revealed on April 18th, 2017, that they would dismiss 21,587 drug cases tainted by the misconduct of Massachusetts State Drug Lab chemist Anna Dukin over a period of 8 years. Although nearly all of those convicted in her cases have already served their prison sentences. Now, this happened back in 2012 with Miss Anna Dukin, but the whole court procedure and everything took 5 years in order to conclude. So this information came out back in April, and as you know, those of you that are familiar with the Topkats Pride channel, we often rehash stories just like this because they need to be archived and they need to be elaborated on, as well as there needs to be a solution for these type of articles, because this is decaying the infrastructure of our quote-unquote civilization and quote-unquote society. But back to the article from the Washington Post, by the way. The beginning of the end of the state's first drug lab scandal. Another chemist in Western Massachusetts may be responsible for just as many flawed cases as Anna Dukin. Well, this came 5 years after Anna Dukin's actions were discovered. Dukin admitted falsifying reports, contaminating samples intentionally, grouping multiple samples together, or simply not doing drug testing she certified she had done. Dukin pleaded guilty to multiple counts of tampering with evidence and obstruction of justice, and she also served 3 years in prison. Yes, Anna Dukin only served 3 years in prison, which is very, very strange to me, because Miss Dukin has affected the lives of 21,587 people who were wrongfully convicted without, well, apparently without anyone making her do this. Anna Dukin has affected at least 21,587 people, as well as their loved ones, because of her actions, and yet the judicial system only gave her 3 years in prison. Matthew Siegel, last name spelled S-E-G-A-L. In a quote, he said, "Today is a major victory for justice and fairness, and for thousands of people in the Commonwealth who were unfairly convicted of drug offenses." Mr. Siegel concluded, "Unfortunately, the victims of this crisis waited far too long for justice. It shouldn't have taken years of litigation by the ACLU, public defenders, and pro bono lawyers to address the stain on the Commonwealth's justice system." So that's the video that I put up about 5-6 days ago now, something like that, that I would like to encourage you to go and watch on our channel. Just check the video upload section. Now, I find this whole situation totally bothersome because of the punishment that the women received, and because there was no checks and balances during the whole time that this woman, Annie Dukin, was doing her devious deeds. And one of the main reasons why I am so glad that Mr. Mike Adams, one of the main reasons that I wanted him to be presented to you as far as this story is concerned, is because he is a scientist and he is a professional, and he's been dealing with this type of information, this type of intelligence for quite some time. Mike Adams is a person who also is very concerned about this situation. And when you think about it, it makes total sense, because just from these two women alone in Massachusetts, over 43,000 people were convicted, and these women both served less than 3 years in jail as a result. Their punishment was nothing. I don't know why the punishment for their deeds could not fit the crime. That's what I think is very, very puzzling. And Mike Adams also expressed his concern in reference to this. Now, many people may think that it's not as serious as it actually is, that 43,000 some odd people who were wrongfully convicted, well, there probably could be worse things on earth that these people would probably say is going on, and you may be true, you may be correct. However, this is not something that should be minimized. So, here, check out Mike Adams' upload.
Oh, there's nothing surprising about this news at all. So an immigrant working for the government in Massachusetts faked the drug tests that resulted in over 23,000 convictions over more than 10 years. Her name is Annie Dukin in Franklin, Massachusetts. She served 3 years in prison because she faked all the data. You know, the local prosecutors and the police and investigators and everybody, detectives, you know, they would bring her evidence and they would say, you know, test this evidence. Tell us, is it heroin? Is it cocaine? Is it marijuana? Oh my God, marijuana. And what she would do is she would take their samples and she would fake the test and just say, oh yeah, that's cocaine. Yeah, that.
What I'd like for everyone to remember here is that Annie Dukin was performing her lab test results 5 times faster than was normally done. 5 times faster, and there was no one that was suspicious of her for years. There was no oversight whatsoever. And I do not know how this can be done, how that type of ignoring, so to speak, by her superiors and her colleagues could take place without any type of checks and balances.
Whatever you said that's what it is. Yep, that's exactly right. And she's an immigrant from Trinidad, and she was a, quote, prolific analyst, having an analyzing quantity record that impressed her supervisors, but also worried her coworkers who were wondering, like, for some reason it takes us longer to run those tests, but Dukin here, she gets them done instantly. That's some really amazing science. How does she do that much incredible science?
Annie Dukin was performing such incredible science because she was just going berserk in the lab. You see, Miss Annie Dukin also falsified her master's degree that she supposedly had from Massachusetts University, or I think it's actually called the University of Massachusetts. That's right. The woman should not even have been in the lab because she did not even have a master's degree like she stipulated, which allowed her to get the job from the University of Massachusetts. So this is probably one of the top 3 reasons that she could just be so incredible in her performance, as in getting these lab results turned in very, very, very quickly.
And so because this was a state-run, or, you know, worked for the state, so this lab's client was the state government, there's no accountability, you see? Whenever you have science combining with government, or more like colliding with government, it turns into an excrement storm. Let me tell you, science and government don't go together, because when the government gets involved in science, the science becomes almost immediately fake science. That's what it turns into, because the government has an agenda. And you see it today in like climate change science. It has an agenda to try to show that climate change is caused solely by carbon emissions from combustion engines and so on. And it's all just bogus science, just like this criminal lab science. There was another scandal in Austin. I live in Central Texas, so Austin's like the closest big city. Austin had a criminal lab, and I don't recall all the details, but they did the same thing. They faked the analyses in these criminal convictions year after year after year. It was so bad that the lab was, I think, ordered by a judge to disband. Like, just shut down, fire all the people. You guys are totally fake science. That's it.
So here, you just heard Mike Adams tell us about another state lab, this one in Austin, Texas, that was so bad that the results and what they were doing in the lab was so bad that the whole lab was closed down. So now we see a pattern here. We see what's going on in Massachusetts, and we have gotten a little taste right there from Mr. Adams about what has taken place in Texas. This problem is an enormous problem in our country, and it is something that we're going to have to talk about. It is something that a solution has to be provided for. It is something that we better pay very close attention to, because in my estimation, just from Texas and Massachusetts alone on this topic, I would easily say that there are millions of people that have been wrongfully convicted in courts when they never should have been, and their lives destroyed and their record destroyed, and their family members have been affected, and on and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, here you have the real war on drugs.
You're not even allowed to function in this state anymore, because this is Texas. We don't put up with your BS fake science. You would be astonished to see what I have seen as a lab science director, interacting with other labs and university labs and hearing the stories and reading some of the studies and reading some of the retractions out there. You would be astonished. I'm here to tell you that probably over 50% of the criminal laboratory analyses that are taking place in the United States are fake science. That's an estimate, okay? I can't back it up with hard numbers, but with some frontline experience, because I built a lab. It's a multi-million-dollar facility. We're audited. We're ISO accredited. We can test for all kinds of illicit drugs, although that's not our focus, but we have the capability to do that. So I go to science conferences. I present posters. I present papers. I author and co-author papers. I review other people's science papers. My specialty is liquid chromatography, mass spec, time of flight instrumentation. Really, I do mass spec analysis, is called. The point is, I see this stuff firsthand, and you would not believe the incredible, shockingly bad science that is out there in other laboratories. So I am not at all surprised that this lab scandal in Massachusetts is going to result in 23,000 convictions being overturned. I mean, think about it, 23,000 convictions. And some of the people have already gone to prison. You know, some of those who were convicted, they went to prison, they served a few years in prison, they got out, and then it turns out, oh, well, hey, did you know that this immigrant lab science gal, Dukin, yeah, she faked the evidence. She just faked the evidence. So you did like 3 years in the slammer, buddy, and it was all fake.
That's right. All of these people have served their time in prison. And I hope that now that they're out of prison, that they not only get a monetary compensation to the tune of at least $25,000 or more. I also hope that these people can have this terrible situation expunged from their record. And on top of that, just remember, Annie Dukin had a colleague by the name of Sonia Farak, last name spelled Farak, who was found to have wrongfully turned in results, who inaccurately turned in results that were also false. So together, Annie Dukin and Sonia Farak have convicted about 40,000 some odd people wrongfully. So we're going to hear more about this in the news it probably won't be on a large scale like this wasn't on a large scale. And this is why we're rehashing this story. But we should hear more about this. And if we hear anything about this, we'll make sure that we make an update to this story.
And by the way, I don't have anything against immigrants in all of this. I'm just pointing that out factually. You know, my wife is a legal immigrant, but this gal was an immigrant from Trinidad. And it was like, she just decided, screw it. Instead of doing science, she just said, well, she's just going to just fake everything. So now you're going to have literally thousands of people who were convicted by this fake science. They're going to sue the state of Massachusetts. And you know what? Let me tell you something. This is a total indictment of the BS war on drugs. If the war on drugs is run like this, and trust me, it is run like this all across America in different cities where the science is totally corrupt. If it's run like this, it's a travesty of justice and it needs to be shut down. And by the way, I can walk into any lab, any forensic lab across the country and do an audit, and I can tell you if they're faking their science. I don't know that anyone's ever going to ask me to do that, but it would not be difficult. Myself or someone else like me, qualified like a lab science director, could walk into many of these labs, and in like a day, I could spot the fraud. I could tell you where they're full of it, because so much of this government-funded science is so lazy, it's so bad, and so just intellectually dishonest, it would blow your mind. You know, there was another presentation that I saw where a scientist who was talking about the bogus claims of climate change said that only about 1% of the scientific studies now that are published in the United States, only about 1% are based on the scientific method. The other 99% are mostly opinions and agendas parading around pretending to be science, but they're not rooted in real principles of the scientific method. And I believe that because I've seen it firsthand. Again, I've been in university science labs, and these people are unbelievable. Like, for example, just a quick example, when I'm doing external standards for an ICP-MS analysis for heavy metals and different toxic metals and so on, I do a multi-point curve, typically at least a minimum of 5-point external standards curve to establish the baseline and get the shape of the curve, whether it's a linear fit or a quadratic fit or whatever. These guys at universities, they'll do like 1 point, and then they'll extrapolate from 1 point. I'm like, how do you know the slope of the line? 1 point does not give you the slope. These people are crazy. But yet they call that science. I'm like, you people you're intellectually lazy, dishonest, and you get grant money to do this stuff? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Did you also know, by the way, that a lot of these drug test kits that are used by cops out in the field, and I want to say on the record, you know, I support local law enforcement. I'm not anti-cops when the cops are doing, you know, honest work and helping to keep communities safe. But a lot of these drug test kits are bogus. They produce positive results when you just open them and expose them to air. You can put like over-the-counter medicines, cough syrup, or even certain types of foods like chocolate, and they will flag a positive.
So, on top of everything else, we have false positives from the tests that are given to people out in the field to see if they are intoxicated. Imagine how many people have been wrongfully convicted as a result of a false positive test in our country. There are tens of millions of drivers that are in our country, and a very good portion of that number is tested by field sobriety test. I've seen cops just pull people over just to test them because of some reason that they say or some reason that they made up. I've seen cop roadblocks where they're testing like every second or third or fourth driver. Imagine how huge this problem is in the country from the information that this scientist, Mike Adams, the health ranger, just told us about. Wow.
Then they arrest you They book you, and then they send the sample to this lab in Massachusetts. They send it to Annie Dukin. Annie Dukin says, "Oh, don't worry, officer. We're going to nail this guy for you." So Dukin takes like 4 minutes to run her, quote, science test, which is like waving a magic wand over the report, printing it out, fill in the blanks. Yes, positive, positive, positive. And then Dukin produces this report that says, "Oh yeah, the lab has confirmed it. Yeah, your chocolate bar is full of opioid. It's an OxyContin chocolate bar, let's say." And all of a sudden, you find yourself in the slammer for 2 or 3 years. Why? Because you had a false positive field drug test followed by a totally fake science lab drug test. And you find yourself, you're in there among 23,000 other people who were also convicted with fake science, because that's what the government does. That's the war on drugs for you right there in a nutshell. Totally bogus, not rooted in any real justice at all, total waste of government time and money, totally fake science parading around as real science, dishonest people, dishonest prosecutors, rigged court system, presumption of guilt. It's just on and on and on. The whole thing is a complete violation of fundamental human rights, violation of due process, violation of just the basic tenets of scientific ethics, and on and on. It's a mess, and it doesn't surprise me one bit. Not one bit. I guess nothing surprises me anymore, but especially these kinds of stories about the government abusing people's lives, stealing their lives, convicting them for things that they didn't even do. Meanwhile, the government's stealing from everybody with this confiscatory taxation policies. And by the way, the government is in bed with the pharmaceutical cartels that are selling the opioids. That's the real pandemic in this country. There's an opioid addiction pandemic in this country. They're selling that stuff at pharmacies all across the country. Drive-through pharmacy over at CVS and Walmart. Your favorite grocery store has a pharmacy. Why? Because it makes them more money than selling you corn chips. The pharmacy is the profit center. Why? Because they're selling addiction. They're selling opioids. They're selling drugs that are destroying people's lives, and no one gets convicted for that. No, but if you're eating your chocolate bar and wearing your tie-dye shirt, you're going to go to jail and probably be in prison for a couple of years, even when you did nothing wrong, because they're going to fake the science to make you look guilty while they keep covering up the drug cartels that are operating with legal protection. It's called Big Pharma. It's called your doctor who's earning kickbacks and bribes from the drug industry, and it's called your local CVS pharmacy, selling drugs to addicts and making money hand over fist with complete protection by the same government that's throwing innocent people in jail when they're not doing anything wrong at all. That's the drug war. That's why people are pretty pissed off across America and tired of this drug war, tired of the fake convictions, tired of the fake science, just tired of it all, tired of the whole corrupt, soon-to-fail system. For God's sake, the insanity has got to end. So we'll keep covering this. Check out my website, naturalnews.com. And also, let's see, for this topic, fake science, we've got another domain. It's called fakescience.news. Yep, just go to fakescience.news, where we cover all the fake science by the corporations and the governments and the universities and the pharmaceutical cartel ghostwriters and the fake science medical journals and all that. We expose it so you can see it, you can learn, you can avoid all that. But thank you for listening. Share this podcast everywhere and hear more at healthrangerreport.com.
Pharmaceutical drugs, Mr. Adams touched on quite eloquently, but I want to add the prison industrial complex. The prison industrial complex is something that we have to heavily consider within this whole dynamic of wrongful prosecutions and making money hand over fist off of the American people, off of U.S. citizens. We have to certainly remember the prison industrial complex, because America has the most people per capita in prison than any other country in the world. The prison industrial complex is privatized. So it is a for-profit industry. in many other countries, the prisons are ran by the government. So I guess it's supported or funded by taxpayer money. However, in our country, it is something that celebrities invest in. It is something that is big, big money, and those who have the funds, they invest in the prison industrial complex because it is something that's growing and growing and growing, and the dividends, the returns on their money is quite astounding for many of them. So I would say, along with the pharmaceutical industry, the prison industrial complex is also an industry that has to be scrutinized, that has to have some trustworthy oversight, that has to be deprivatized. Mr. Mike Adams talked about the Austin situation, and I must tell you, I never heard anything about this Austin, Texas situation where all of the people in the lab were fired. Did you hear anything about it? Well, I'm going to do some research about that, and if I find it motivational enough, I'll make a video about the lab that was in Austin, Texas that was shut down because of all the frivolous, corrupt, pseudo, backwards, wrongful science that was going on there. But I'm wondering, did anybody go to jail? Because I have not heard about anybody going to jail. A whole lab was closed down, but I have not heard about anyone going to jail. And yet there were multiple employees in this lab. And again, there was no oversight in this lab. Somehow, these labs keep escaping oversight from the upper echelon, from their bosses, from their colleagues. Why in the world then have we not heard about multiple arrests that was from this lab in Austin alone that was just like Annie Dukin's arrest finally? Many years, about 6 to 8 years after she began her criminal crusade, we heard about Annie Dukin and Sonia Farak. Why then haven't we heard about the criminals from the lab that was in Austin? Please go and check out Mr. Mike Adams' website on youtube.com/thehealthranger, as well as you can find Mr. Mike Adams online under the Health Ranger, Mike Adams Health Ranger. My name is Cue Pate, and I hope you realize that this is a gigantic problem in our country. And outside of praying, we're going to have to take some action to stop this, because you could be the next person that they wrongfully prosecute, or I could be the next person that they wrongfully prosecute, or our loved ones, or our, and on and on and on. Woo. For the Topkats Pride, thank you for stopping by.